Coming up in This Week in Computer Hardware, is it safe to buy a Samsung 840 SSD? PS4 and Xbox One already hitting the performance wall. The tiny LIVA Windows Mini PC Steiger Dynamics Maven Core might be the ultimate home theater PC, and quite a bit more. It's all coming up next on Twitch.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twitch.
Bandwidth for Twitch is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Twitch, This Week in Computer Hardware, episode 291, recorded October 30th. Should I avoid Samsung SSDs? Welcome to Twitch, This Week in Computer Hardware, Twitch's weekly show that aims to bring you the most useful, most informative, most helpful, most delightful, and very rarely, if ever at all, the most supercilious information about computer hardware on the planet. We love the laptops and the tablets too. And joining me as always, Mr. Ryan Shrout, the king of video card benchmarking.
Oh boy,
who's not
can't.
loopy.
Oof, man, super excited about that. Oh, what a title to have.
But you've earned it, sir. It is a mountain you climbed.
Thank you.
And then you built the mountain higher because the mountain wasn't high enough for you.
Gotta keep going up.
New forms
Otherwise, you just fall down the other side. So,
Word.
Yeah.
Unless you've got a purple crayon, in which case you draw.
Yeah, that's true too.
Balloon and the thing and the whatever. Hey, I was kind of curious. You wanted to start the show with the ECS LIVA Windows-based mini PC, a palm-sized desktop computer. I'm assuming because it's funny because we've seen. We've obviously seen the Intel NUC boxes, and then there's been some other similar form factor devices where it's literally a box with a PC inside of it, a small box. How did the latest in this genre, this superlatives apparently fail me because I've been hacking up pieces of my lungs for the last 2 days. I'd like to thank my children for bringing filthy germs into the house. Windows 8.1, mini PC, Bay Trail M, and Bay Trail. So then we should probably say that we're probably going to be talking about Intel Core M a lot today.
Well, yeah. Well, I don't know about today necessarily. So, I mean, this ECS LIVA PC is based on Bay Trail. It's Silvermont. It's the same thing that you've found in tablets and that type of thing. It is essentially the same componentry that you would find in a 8 to 10 inch Intel tablet. Running in a kind of desktop configuration, right? If you scroll down and look at the picture of the motherboard, right, it has connectivity like an Ethernet connection to USB. One of them is USB 3. It is powered by USB. That little USB connector on the left there, that's the power supply input to this device. HDMI, VGA, passively cooled, totally silent. But it is going to have some performance trade-offs, right? Because it is a Bay Trail-based device that most people, or many people, will try to run in a kind of traditional desktop environment, right? It does support Windows 8.1. If you scroll down even a little bit further on that page, you'll see a size comparison that compares the motherboard to an SSD. And if you look at those, you'll very quickly realize that okay, it kind of puts things in perspective. It puts things into scale. Exactly how small this device is. And it's pretty impressive, the functionality it has. It has, like I said, gigabit Ethernet. It has wireless. It includes an 802.11n wireless card. It has 32 or 64 gigs of eMMC storage, which is, again, what you would find in a tablet or phone form factor. Give you an idea, again, of the performance levels there. But it does support Windows 8.1, and after we published this, I think the day after, they actually announced a version using Windows 8.1 with Bing, which is the free version of Windows 8.1 that Microsoft is offering up to builders that are, delivering these super low-cost devices. So you could even, in theory, get this with an operating system already installed, or at least a license for an operating system already in it, which is pretty impressive, right? Performance-wise, it's an interesting discussion. It's not going to win any benchmarks. It's not going to.
It's not supposed to.
Yes, exactly. But it has, it will run desktop applications. It will run your standard Windows programs as long as you're comfortable with what the performance level will be. For example, HD playback, video playback, right? It will run 1080p in HTML5, but it doesn't run 1080p in Flash very well. It runs 1080p playback on MKV files as well. So, kind of hence towards some of the inefficiencies of Flash, but also in the performance of this particular device. Wireless performance was good. Power consumption was 3.2 watts at idle, 9.5 watts under a full load.
Modest.
Web browsing on this is good. You could, gaming is not really an option. You could do, I think Sebastian, who wrote the review for us, talks about, you could do retro gaming if you want to play.
This is a machine for Bejeweled if ever there was one.
Yeah.
I want to give a shout out to Sebastian for also pointing out that this could be a net top PC. And when I hear that, we're talking about, home theater PC streamer. We're talking about basic desktop functionality, because the vast majority of things we do on our computers these days in offices for most people do not require a smidge of the power that's available in like a Core i5, much less a Core i7 processor.
Sure.
Could this be used as a server? Is there any sort of ability to connect large amounts of external storage on it?
So it has a USB 3.0 port, but there's no SATA connections or anything like that. So you could connect to an external SATA, RAID array or even single drive. You could do that. We also talked about would this be able to handle or work with, and performance-wise, be able to handle the InfiniTV network-based tuner card, right? Where like maybe you have that hooked up on the network, and this acts as the set-top box, but you definitely still have to have some kind of external USB storage to actually record those videos to. And they're you start getting into making things more complicated than just say, hey, why don't you just build a $400 or $500 computer at that point? But this type of computer, like I think if you look at the last page, there's a picture, like he puts Ubuntu on it, and then he shows it running Lords of the Realm 2, which is some, really, really old PC title that plays fine on it. There's a picture of the Fractal Design Core 3300 case next to the LIVA PC, and it gives you an idea of what kind of performance to expect based on what the size is. It's completely capable of running browser-based stuff. But if you're the type of person that's going to have, like if I look at my, Chrome right now, I have probably 20 tabs open with stuff. You're probably going to be hitting some walls with that. Remember, it has 2 gigs of memory. So there's complications there. But I think it for me, it's $180 as it is. And I think the Windows 8.1 version is like maybe $10 more, $20 more. So for $200 or less, you can basically get a completely functional, ready to go PC that you can just kind of experiment and play around with and see what neat things you can do with it as almost like a kind of a hobbyist tool, I guess. For a company that had not released any device like this, really, it has some cool stuff like that. USB powered and completely silent. Those are the types of things that make it stand out a little bit from something like that's much, like the Gigabyte bricks, much more powerful devices, but use more power and are considerably noisy. So maybe you have this sitting behind a TV and, you run Netflix on it. It should be able to do that just fine, or HBO Go or something like that, as long as you have a way to control it remotely.
It's interesting to just kind of think about what's going on in terms of it's just the I guess it's like, we're used to seeing sort of laptop innards on the back of monitors or used for low end desktops or all-in-ones, and now we're looking at an even more sort of, I don't know, thinned out, restrained version of that. I mean, I can't say, does $180 sound expensive for it or cheap? Because
$180. Yeah. You're essentially getting a Windows tablet without a screen, right, and without a battery, I guess. But you're also getting things
more
like
software than you'd get on a Windows tablet.
Right. Well, like I said, if you get the 8.1 with Bing, you will get an operating system with it. I don't think it seems like a lot of money because it's probably on the edge, right? Because there are people that will be out there. It's like, well, if you spend $100 more or $150 more, you can actually build a full computer. And yes, absolutely, you can. It's going to be bigger. It's going to be bulkier. And it's not going to have the same flexibility. It's not going to be USB powered. It's not going to be silent. And this is, you know, obviously, if this were $110, something could be awesome. If it's not quite Raspberry Pi pricing or size, even really,
but it's a lot more powerful.
Yeah, and it runs x86, and you can just put Windows on it, and you can then experiment with the vast array of Windows software and web-based applications that are out there. So I think it's worth a look if you're just kind of if you think, man, it'd be nice if I had a computer to do this right here, and it's not a very taxing environment that you're looking for.
All you need is $280 or a monitor or an HDMI input on a HCTV.
Yeah.
You guys had a lot of fun with this machine. Steiger Dynamics Maven Core home theater PC review, TTX 980 and CableCARD, which means this, ladies and gentlemen, is a home theater PC that was built to do badass gaming.
It's funny. This was a complete accident that these two stories kind of came out in the same week on our site. But like, if you look at them, they're polar opposites. Right. $180 home theater, like headless display type
twee little
design.
box.
Yeah. Versus the Steiger Dynamics home theater PC it's like a 4U sized full ATX home theater computer that could also go next to a TV, but offers, we'll say, a slightly different impact on performance levels, right? This has a 4690K Devil's Canyon quad-core processor. It's got a GTX 980 graphics card in it. It's got a 250 gig or 500 gig SSD, I can't remember which one, and then like a 3 terabyte hard drive. And it has that Ceton 4-tuner cable card as well.
And a slot loader for Blu-rays.
Of course, yes.
Well, no, you laugh, but I mean, like that's actually a nice touch because they made it stackable for home theater equipment, and they kept things as simple as possible for the Blu-rays.
I think it's a custom case as well. I'm not 100% sure, but we couldn't find anything else, you know, that matched it exactly. And it's got a very good hi-fi look to it. It's a big case. It's not small. You know, you can tell when you look at like the picture with the USB 3 open and all that type of stuff, that little bay in the middle holds your USB 3 and memory card and AV or audio inputs and stuff like that. And this is like close to a $3,000 configuration of computer components, but it has the capability. Like it has a 4-tuner cable card in it, and it comes with Media Center, and it's built for replacing a set-top box for your primary TV location. It's got a GTX 980 in it, so that when you're not watching TV, if you want to play some PC games, the system's going to be able to mop the floor with pretty much everything at 1080p. And it does have support for 4K at 60 hertz as well because of that HDMI 2.0 port on that card.
Assuming I guess a new 4K television would probably have HDMI 2.0, but it seems, I mean, it seems like you're paying a lot of money for that case.
You are. I mean, it's about a $700 markup for, we'll say, the case difference, and then, you know, installation, setup, warranty, all the stuff that the baggage that usually comes with a custom built PC. You can absolutely build the exact same machine for less money yourself, and you know, if people want to do that, trust me, I'm all for it. You could spend that $700 on, you know, a second GTX 980 or whatever you wanted to do, right?
I think I was just double checking because I wanted to make sure I was doing the math right in my head, because I was like, Core i5, $3,000. Wait a minute. You know,
you can get this case with a like a Core i5 not Haswell, like an Ivy Bridge part, and a 750 Ti and a smaller SSD with a smaller hard drive. And I think you can get it for as low as $1,500. So there are other options, right? Kind of one of the top ends. But you know, it had been quite a long time since I had attempted to use cable card setups for anything, and Alan's actually the only one that has cable in our office, so we went over to his place, and you know, he set it all up, and we looked at all of it, and he came away pretty impressed with the experience of using Media Center, despite the fact that it's kind of an aged piece of software.
Well, I mean,
Robert's been using it.
No, I mean Robert's been using it constantly for years. He's used every cable card tuner I think that's ever been released.
Yeah,
and a couple that I don't think actually ever made it to market. This, given the fact that it hasn't entirely been abandoned by Microsoft, it still works really well and one of the only really good DVR options. Although I think there are a couple other worth considering. It was funny because also this week, I haven't finished my conversation with Robert about this, but ArcSoft, who's been the maker of our favorite PC-based Blu-ray software that integrates into Windows Media Center, stopped supporting that package, which was kind of really frightening.
I was disappointed. I was disappointed to find that the Media Center extenders basically don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Like, unless you buy an Xbox 360 for every TV, there is no such thing as a Media Center extender. So the idea of, like, for me, replacing a whole home DVR and a bunch of devices everywhere is not really possible. I think I came away more impressed with the prospect of a cable card based system if we can get all those secondary things kind of connected and working, like the Media Center extension type stuff. But an issue for a different time perhaps. But the performance of the system, obviously killer, right? Using all 4 tuners at the same time and recording or watching on all 4, not a problem. And with the GTX 980, you're gonna be able to game very, very well. It is expensive. This is also the company, by the way, Steiger Dynamics is the distributor for the Couchmaster. Do you remember that in the US?
No.
The Couchmaster is the like, I don't know how to describe it. Like, it's for when you're sitting on a couch and you're trying to play games on a PC, and there's 2 cushions that sit on either side of you. They're kind of free moving. They're just there. And then there's like a top, like a kind of a tabletop that sits on those 2 cushions over your lap. And it's a little bit of an angle, and you put your keyboard and mouse on that.
We used to call those when I was young a TV tray for eating your food.
Yes, but it is now, it lets you sit back more because the foam pads on the other side kind of allow you to pull that back in, so you don't have to lean forward over the thing. It's an expensive, it's a goofy accessory, but yeah, there you go.
It's an expensive board that replaces. It's an expensive piece of hardware that replaces a board so you can slouch while gaming, is what you just told me.
It lets you game comfortably on a couch. And if that means slouching, then yes, I guess that's accurate. Yeah. So if anybody's curious about that system, they can go check out that review. But what it has done for me is made me more interested in looking at cable card accessories and home theater PCs in that way. So
cable card works really, really well. I think home theater PCs work really, really well. I think, especially because we have a projector and our screen's like 100 inches in the living room. That is the future of gaming for me. Is giant screens and surround sounds and scaring the heck out of the children and the spouse.
Yeah.
Because the internet didn't have enough things to argue about. Ubisoft's Assassin's Creed Unity was quoted that the team had decided to run both the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 variants of the game at 1600 by 900 resolution, quote, to avoid all the debates and stuff, unquote. Ryan, your lead question that the internet, I think, was, I don't know, shouting, hurling its beleaguered yelp from the rooftops. Were they paid off by Microsoft?
That wasn't me. I wasn't yelling that.
I was suggesting that you were reporting what the internet was shouting.
Yes.
The internet thinks that.
As the internet does, it always assumes the worst pretty much right out of the gate, no matter what is actually happening at any given moment in time. But I kind of like, it's not really like, I don't really care about that stuff. It's not really what I cover. What I was more interested in is apparently an anonymous developer of the Assassin's Creed Unity game wrote into a very, very popular gaming podcast from Giant Bomb, giantbomb.com, and basically said the key point coming out of it was that the Ubisoft team sees the game, Assassin's Creed Unity, as already being crazily optimized, in quotes, that's his line, for the architecture and consoles, even as we just now approach the 1-year anniversary of the release. And he said that more than half of the like they're fully utilizing the GPU and they're fully utilizing the processor, and over 50% of the CPU is actually being used to help the rendering engine decompress and compute the pre-baked global illumination data that they use in the game to make it look, as pretty and as good as it can. And thus they are being somewhat limited in the world of artificial intelligence, like AI and just, draw calls, by that other remaining 50% of that processor, which leads the question, is it possible that we are already seeing a kind of performance wall, a peak in performance of these two new consoles, way prior to when we ever saw that with the Xbox 360 or the PS3? And there's interesting arguments for one way or the other. Most interesting argument, obviously, against it is that, no, we see this every generation. People start out, they say that it's super optimized, but they always find more to do with the hardware.
But I mean, the PlayStation 3 was a nightmare for people to program in the early days. It was a radical concept and a radical processor, and developers. It took about a friend of mine once, I think his quote was, It took us about a year to figure out how to get it to do anything well, right? Because it was just such a radically different processor, and the way it handled information was so different from all the other stuff out there. So for the next generation of consoles, it became a very big deal for the PlayStation to be aligned with, what I'll just basically just call, PC software development. Yeah. Just to make it easier for everyone and to bring it in line, so developers weren't like having to take some crazy loop figuring out, the Core Spectre 7 processor of Doom, which uses weird math that only Sony has access to because it's Sony proprietary, like memory stick. But I mean, it's I don't remember anybody saying a year in that we were done with the PlayStation 3.
Not on the I don't remember that on the PS3. I know, for example, like when Gears of War 2 came out on the Xbox 360, there are quotes out there from the Unreal developers saying, hey, we have maxed out the 360. And there was still a little bit of room there. But I think you're right. The difference here is this is well-known architecture. x86, AMD GCN. Like, we've known about this stuff for a long time. Developers are very comfortable with it. And it doesn't surprise me at all. Yeah, they're already optimized. Well, they've been doing it for years, as long as the HD 6000 series of graphics cards has been out. Yeah. So, it doesn't surprise me that in a year they've said, we're kind of hitting a limit. The GPU side, that makes total sense. What I think is a little bit interesting is on the processor side. Remember, this APU built by AMD for both these consoles are using 8 Jaguar cores, which are AMD's kind of lower mid-range performance cores. They're not as high as like the Athlon or the Kaveri or whatever it is cores out there. So they're smaller. And I think, as Josh posited on our podcast last night, that a lot of people were thinking, they're low IPC cores. They're low performance per thread cores, but we have 8 of them, and multi-threading is the future. And so as a result, we think this is going to be just fine. And as it's turning out,
they underestimated
that the individual threading performance still really matters, and it's kind of disappointing.
Well, the person that wrote Giant Bomb, it's like we are bound from the CPU because of AI. About 50% of the CPU is used for the prepackaged rendering parts. Yep. It sounds underpowered to me.
Yeah, I mean.
I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have an equivalent of an 8-core Jaguar processor to test, but we do have the equivalent of those graphics cards. And you're looking at an HD 7770 for the Xbox and an HD 7790 for the PlayStation 4. And when they announced the specs, like even before the release of the consoles, I think a lot of us were like, I don't really see that lasting 10 years. If you remember back to the PS3, it's hard to, I know. When it launched, like when they announced the specs, I think the GPU they announced at the time wasn't even released yet on the PC. Right. Like it was, wow, that's the next generation of stuff that they're going to put in there. And so that gives it a little bit more headroom, if you will, for, its long-term platform stability. And
Were they not willing to lose as much money on this platform compared to PlayStation 3?
Yeah, I think that's what it was. I think both sides saw how much money they lost,
Right?
because you were always selling the consoles at a loss on a per unit basis and hoping to make up for it in software sales and getting a margin in other areas. And both of them wanted to avoid that. Both of them wanted to avoid issues with using slightly unknown architectures and having failure points in both. Sony being the cell architecture being a flop, and Microsoft being the fact that they had all those red rings and bad silicon issues. So they both wanted to avoid that, and they go, well, okay, this is a known quantity, and we'll go with that. And I just think it's very possible, and I'm not saying it's for sure, but I think it's possible that we may be seeing repercussions of that already for people that are dedicated console gamers. But
and
if you game on a PC, tons of places to grow.
It's a good thing. I think it's also worth that you put an update, a coda at the end of this article. I think it's worth noting is that you're not attacking the AMD APU architecture. You're not attacking Jaguar because, as you point out, it doesn't matter what processor they used. They set the bar too low for the graphical and general computing. They didn't put a lot of processor in this box. They didn't put a lot of GPU in this box. And,
right. Yeah.
GPUs are advancing pretty rapidly right now. So
they are.
I don't think it becomes, I don't know. It's part of me is like, oh, it doesn't get that painful until we get to a lot of 4K, some serious 4K penetration in homes. And then I'm like 1600 by 900. Really?
Yeah. And
I built
a very
$380 gaming machine that can do 1080p gaming at 60 frames per second. Really? Yeah. 1600 by 900?
And I completely understand the people who say, you know what, the visual difference between 16 by 9 and 19 by 10 is going to be minimal. And I go, yeah, that's true. But what is it telling you if games released basically at the 1-year anniversary of a console can't run at the native resolution of the displays anymore? Right? They already can't do it. So in the future, if you want to run at 1080p, you've got to start scaling back on other effects and other compute processes. So
I've got it. Microsoft,
okay, let's hear it.
Microsoft and Sony are working together to kill off the console gaming market to move us all to PC gaming in the living room.
Yes, that's got to be it. Sony would benefit in so many ways. Whether or not they're trying to, they're doing a good job, because PC gaming is a rising media, right? Like, we get more viewers and listeners and questions and people buying PC hardware in the last 2 years than we have in the two previous to that, right? So PC gaming is on the uptick. People like doing that. Actually, just today, I had my 13-year-old nephew in my office because, my 13-year-old cousin in my office because he had built a system on PC Part Picker. He had priced it out. He had saved his own money. He wanted to build his own computer. He had never built his own computer before, and he wanted me to go over the parts list with him and say, what do you think about all these different things? And he wants to play Minecraft. He wants to play Call of Duty when Advanced Warfare comes out and all that stuff. So I love to see that, because that means there's going to be somebody else that'll let me retire eventually.
This is the future.
So, yeah.
Speaking of the future, Intel Broadwell-E expected for Q1 2016. VR Zone China, says Scott Michaud, got a hold of an alleged Intel leak. Go figure. That talks about the next enthusiast processor platform, Broadwell-E. This architecture is mostly Haswell-E, that it has its rated feature size shrunk down to 14 nanometer. Given an available BIOS, it is expected to support at least some existing LGA 2011 V3 motherboards with an X99 chipset. Like Haswell, they're sticking with a maximum of 40 PCI Express lanes. We will need to wait for individual SKUs to see whether one or more of the models will be limited to 28 lanes, like the Haswell E-based Core i7 5820K. 140-watt TDP, according to the leak. And support for overclocking with Extreme Edition K SKUs, integrated memory controller, 4 channels, DDR4. Boy, I hope DDR4 drops in price fast. I have a question for you. Is PCI Express 3.0 is 28? If you are not using multiple GPUs, is 28 lanes of PCI Express a problem?
No,
Okay.
not at all. I mean, not, let's take graphics card out of it. As long as you are not populating all of the PCI Express slots with accessories or adding cards, then no. But I mean, that gives 28 lanes. If you use one video card, that leaves you with 12 left. That you could then use for, like motherboards that have M.2 SATA, by 4 SATA or by 4 PCI Express, storage connectivity or something like that, right?
Well, I was also laughing because I had to pull a PCI Express card out of my primary box, my gaming box, because I've got the Creative Sound Blaster card in there for testing, and then I pulled out my USB 3.0 / SATA adapter because I needed more SATA ports inside of that machine. And I was like, oh, wait, there's no way anybody's going to need more SATA ports or USB ports in an X99 motherboard. So it's like, okay.
It's very true.
Because they have all, I mean, even I'm looking at that motherboard and thinking like, wow, that's a lot of SATA ports. Interesting. Q1 2016 rather than late 15.
It's a long way away.
Yeah.
The only oddity in that is if you look at that diagram, like one, it looks unfortunately similar to what we have today with Haswell-E, right? Core counts, thread counts, all that stuff. It does say 4 channels of DDR4, 1 DIMM per channel, which is interesting. Because right now you can get 2 DIMMs per channel on Haswell-E. Like you can have 8 DIMMs in a system. This is either, I don't know if this is a typo or something that they're attempting to do in order to differentiate between the consumer variant and the professional variant. But right now, the way it looks is you'll only be able to support 4 DIMMs. That's probably fine for most people, again, but it would be an unfortunate kind of step backwards if that's ended up how they did with that platform. So
it'd be weird.
Again, we got a year and like 4 months to figure it out. So should be good.
And it could have been a typo. AMD Radeon R9 290X now selling at $299. Don't call it a price cut to match the GTX 980 and GTX 970 prices from their releases last month. But the prices have not been cut. They've not been reduced. I guess they've been market optimized. They have been XFX Radeon R9 290X Double D $299 after manufacturer's instant rebate. Gigabyte R9 290X WindForce, I like that name, $360. MSI R9 290X Gaming, $366. These are nice cards. They use a little bit more power, than the NVIDIA cards, but they're nice. They're lovely. They're lovely cards. Lovely.
So I wrote up that news post last Friday, and since then prices have fluctuated again. And this is kind of the fact that AMD doesn't, quote, cut the prices and instead depending on channel promotions or whatever the crap they want to call it, means that there are going to be dramatic fluctuations not related to supply and demand stuff. So like that XFX card is no longer $299 after rebate. Now it's $319 after a rebate. And Amazon, it's like way above that, so I wouldn't even consider that. But even at $319, I still think the price cuts are even worth noting again, because these are even lower than what we talked about a week or two ago with the R9 290 and 290X. Considering even at let's say $350 for a 290X, that's $200 less expensive than a GTX 980. $200. That's a hell of a hill for NVIDIA to have to climb to make a case for their product over AMD's, right? It really, really is. And some consumers are still doing it, and it's very clear that's the case because the 980s and 970s keep selling out. But I think it's much more difficult to make that argument, right? That, well, for $200, I could buy 4 brand new, retail PC games or, brand new release PC games, and getting very similar performance as the 980. If you don't want the other features like G-Sync or GFE or whatever that other stuff is, $200 is a pretty hefty amount of money to save. Yeah, invest that in a higher capacity SSD and then install all of your games as solid state drives. There's all kinds of stuff you could do with that. So I can appreciate the pressure of the back and forth between these two guys, because that'll only mean interesting things for the rest of us. So
So support AMD and go buy yourself a 290. Because you know what? If AMD falls out of the market completely, Intel and NVIDIA are going to price things exactly how they want to.
Yep.
What a horrifying thought. Samsung Germany acknowledges 840 basic performance slowdown promises fix. Apparently, it's not just the 840 Evo or the Pro, but apparently the original pure TLC model Samsung 840 drives also have slowdown issues. If you would like, you can read the German. Uns ist durch das Feedback, das uns erreicht hat, bekannt, dass es auch beim Zugriff auf bestimmte Daten bei Modellen der SSD, I can't remember how to say numbers in German anymore, but I can apparently still read it. But
that's pretty good.
I studied German.
All right. I did not. When I attempted to do this on my show last night, I'm sure I pissed off every German listener we ever had. So
they probably laughed. But basically, it's like I like the translation, the human translation. Because of the feedback we got, we realized that accessing specific data with units of SSD 840 could lead to lower reading performance. For a moment, our experts are systematically examining the SSD units with different system environments, and we are working on a solution as fast as possible. Due to different technologies, the Pro Series 840 Pro and 850 Pro are not affected. Samsung. So
the reason this is interesting is that the U.S. branch, or even the Korean, like the official headquarter branch of Samsung, has never talked about the non-Evo version of the 840 being affected by the problem. But we all knew it was because we had lots of reports of people saying it was. And it only makes sense because they are basically the same design inside, minus a little bit of caching one way or the other. So hopefully this kind of accelerates the acceptance of the problem from everybody else, all the other divisions inside Samsung, and maybe accelerates the adoption of an update along with it. So good news for people who have 840s that are still kind of waiting to hear what's going on.
Oh my goodness. I am on that list, although my drive is not slowed down yet. Also, apparently there is a, if you use the 840 Evo performance restoration tool, you might find a smart data misreporting error. Do not panic as of yet.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
That all seems fine.
Oh my goodness. It was all going so well with SSDs for a while.
Especially that SSD, especially those 840s.
Yeah. It's, yeah, no, I have this, my Amazon, whatever you call the part of Amazon where you don't buy something, but you save it, your wish list or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Just with this SSD price taunting me as it drops more and more over the last 6 months. GeForce GTX 970 coil whine concerns. Really? That just sounds awful.
I don't know.
I didn't mean to make a pun there, but the idea of having audible noise off of a surface mount component that you can actually notice above your fans is kind of horrifying.
So
what's the story?
It's an interesting phenomena. Coil noise is actually caused by the physical vibration of copper coils inside inductors. And there we go. What's interesting about it, besides that, is that this has happened for years and years and years and years, but it's usually the result of a bad inductor. Something that is faulty or may become faulty, but it doesn't necessarily mean something's bad. It just means that like the kind of build quality of it was lessened. If you look back at that picture, those inductors, they're encased in plastic essentially, right? And inside that is a copper coil, lots of rings of copper coil, and they vibrate when they are, have electric flowing through them at a high frequency. And that all can be fixed, like the vibration can be fixed if you compress it all really well, or even you like put some like hot glue in there, like you put some adhesive in there and squeeze it all together, that kind of eliminates it. But it does happen with pretty much all video cards. If you've ever, to a slight degree, it can happen with all video cards. If you ever started up a game like Skyrim with VSync turned off, or the new Civ Beyond Earth, and like the menu screen, and you hear this kind of buzzing sound from your computer, and you have fraps open. That's usually like when the GPU's running at like 2,000 frames per second or 3,000 frames per second. That is the same coil whine that we're talking about. It's perfectly normal to happen when you're at those obscene frame rates, and there's really not much they can do about it. But when it happens when you are gaming at kind of a normal frame rate, 50 to 150 frames per second, that is where we call them, where it would be a problem, where it would be bad. And there have been some forum reports, lots of forum threads, people talking about, hey, my 970 does this. It has this sound. What is this? This is the worst coil noise I've ever had with a card. Right. So I finally started to try to look into it. The issue is I have 4 970s here, and none of them have this issue. And so it's very hard to kind of confirm anything. When the original R9 290 290Xs shipped, the reference designs, they had coil whine issues, and I had 2 of them that had those same issues. So I was able to kind of corroborate and confirm what people were saying. Now it's very difficult for me without having, a dozen cards shipped in all of a sudden from all these retail outlets.
It's funny. Does anybody know if the coils are coming from the same vendor, or if the same vendor provides coils to all of the different GPU manufacturers by any chance?
I'm sure the same vendor supplies it.
Right.
There may be. The issue is that what's interesting about it is when NVIDIA makes a new video card, they usually have a reference design that they build themselves. They have their partner, one specific partner, build it, and they sell it to everybody to rebrand, right? They did that with the 980. With the 970, none of the partners wanted to use NVIDIA's reference design. They all wanted to build their own to differentiate in some way. And what can happen in that case is like, well, okay, now all these guys are kind of in a hurry to get the 970s ready. So they're just kind of picking whatever parts are available. They're not doing the screening that they would normally do. And what can happen is you get a batch of bad parts. EVGA has been very upfront and said, hey, if you have this issue, send us the card, we'll RMA it. We have swapped out the part that was causing it on the production line, so future shipments of the 970s won't have that problem, right? MSI has been accused of having a lot of these issues, and they've been like, yeah, RMA it if you want. I don't know if they've changed anything. Hopefully they haven't. NVIDIA is kind of taking a kind of a hands-off approach. They basically say we're actively looking into it, but they're kind of not, they haven't said this, but their excuse would be, it's like, we didn't design these boards. These are our partners' boards. It doesn't really matter in the end because it's in the NVIDIA brand and the GeForce brand that gets, bashed on when these issues exist. So I'm sure behind closed doors, they are politely asking their partners to get their act together and make sure that all of their cards are as high a quality as possible. So I do at the bottom of this post on PCPer.com that looks at 970 coil whine, there is a poll where I'm just trying to get some feedback from people that read this. They like, if you have a 970, does it have no issues, or does it have issues? And then tell me what vendor you have those issues with. And I haven't looked at all the full results or anything yet, but I can say from the data I have seen yet, it seems pretty well distributed across all of the partners, which would lend credence to the idea of there being a coil king somewhere in China or Taiwan that maybe had a bad run that intersected with the 970 production or something. But I don't think there's something there's no design flaw with the graphics chip in any capacity. I guess, be careful how I use these words, in any way. It's just an unfortunate design decision at some point, whether it be from a coil king or a board designer or a parts salesman that made the final call on which inductors to use or whatever. So something to keep an eye on, but getting 970s in stock is so difficult now, apparently, that I'm not sure anybody's really overly concerned about it. So
it will be if they buy one and it shows up and it's howling at them.
Yes. Yeah. And then if you can't RMA it because everybody's out of stock, that's even a more painful feeling, right? So keep that in mind.
I am excited and slightly horrified by the Alienware 13. I'm going to say that right now. Jeremy Hellstrom wrote this up for PC Per. This is something we've been getting promised for a while, right? You're going to have, and we've seen variations on it, and people have hacked versions of PCI Express. But essentially, what we have is in Alienware's distinctive styling, a lunchbox that holds a GPU that plugs into an Alienware 13 laptop. So it's a 460 watt power. So inside that box that just scrolled by, or that little lunch box you see to the right of that 13-inch Alienware laptop, is a 460 watt power supply, space for a GPU. Quote, the GPU can be at most a double slot card. Larger ones will not fit, and it can have a maximum power draw of 375 watts. The single cord you see coming out of the back of the enclosure in the picture at the top from Gizmodo provides a combined PCI Express and USB connection to the laptop, and when connected will disable the laptop's internal GPU and allow the external desktop GPU to power the system, which is kind of cool and kind of crazy. Gizmodo tested it. They said the external GPU functioned perfectly when it was enabled, which I like this, which is great news for those of us who have been hoping that PCI Express would eventually bring us a product such as this one. And Jeremy notes that if Dell pulled it off, surely other companies can pull it off, and hopefully it will become a thing for gaming laptops. And I think this suddenly makes gaming laptops a little more viable. Maybe not on the plane, right? But in the idea that,
Excuse me, sir, I'm going to need this other tray over here for a second.
Oh no, they turned off, and it's funny because in a lot of planes they rotate which set of seats has the 120 volt power supply turned on. Because apparently, 18,000 zillion horsepower in the engines, but they can't keep 120 volts AC to all the seats simultaneously.
Complicated.
Or maybe they want to just give some of the people and some of the plane a rest from the gadgets. But what's interesting about this is it suddenly means, for gaming, it seems like GPUs, especially laptop GPUs, age a lot more. A lot faster rather than a lot more quickly than the CPUs inside of them. So this is interesting. I'm curious to see if this is a success.
You said it at the beginning. I've seen so many of these that oh no, this is going to be the future. And it has never worked out. And the kind of, even if this actually goes on sale and it works the way they promise it's going to work, the issue is this is a very proprietary connection. There's no reason this couldn't be done with Thunderbolt, right? Maybe there is a reason, but I don't think there's a reason this couldn't be done with Thunderbolt. I would love for this to work.
There's a reason they don't do it for Thunderbolt, because then you'll just buy one and use it on a Macintosh laptop or something.
Yes, exactly. Right. For Alienware, it makes sense to make this a proprietary kind of combination package. But if 2 generations down the line on their laptops, they don't support this device anymore, that's stupid as well, because now you've got this accessory, this amplifier, this toaster next to your machine that now you can't upgrade your primary system. You can't upgrade your processor anymore because the machine that you would upgrade to doesn't have support for this device. So I want this to be cool. There are reports of it working with both NVIDIA and AMD graphics cards. I think it's awesome, but I don't know. I feel like I've seen this so many times before. I don't know what to say. I don't know.
At least it's not 3D goggles. MSI's GT80 Titan laptop with a mechanical keyboard coming soon. This is so awesome. Gamers that are true gamers. Mechanical keyboards are a big thing for a lot of gaming enthusiasts. And Jeremy wrote up the press release from MSI's City of Industry, California. MSI Computer Corp, a leading manufacturer of computer hardware products and solutions, unveils the GT80 Titan, the world's first gaming laptop with a mechanical keyboard. SteelSeries gaming keyboard with Cherry Brown MX switches and the 18-inch gaming beast. So this is a pizza box laptop, if ever there was one. I gotta say, I'm not a huge fan of is that thing 3 inches thick?
Yeah, that's full throw on those keys.
Which is awesome if you're a gamer, but you're gonna need a big backpack to carry this around.
Yes, and that giant space, if you go down to the next picture, that giant space between the top of the keyboard and say the base of the monitor, that's where all the computer is, right? Usually that stuff goes under the keyboard, but when you have keys that are the same thickness as a normal keyboard, you don't really get that option. So they either were going to make the keyboard incredibly thick or you make it very deep. And the benefit of what they've done this way is that, okay, they have an 18-inch screen that they know and that they've used on other devices, and so it kind of fits into that form factor. this is crazy looking. Like, I'm all about trying new and unique things. I don't know how this would feel.
If this, I'm not, I got to say, these are not my favorite. I'm not a huge fan of the brown switches. I know people that really like them.
Sure.
They're a little soft and a little sloppy for me. So I would be a little more excited about it if I was a bigger fan of the brown keys that are used in this mechanical keyboard. I will say, having typed about 1 billion words, the idea of having a full mechanical keyboard in a laptop is really thrilling. Mostly, though, I want to point out that not only are standard keycaps of 27 millimeters of thickness nearly 5 times the traditional, so 5 times the size of traditional laptop keyboards. This is, and I got to say, I'm quoting MSI here, the world's slimmest and lightest 18-inch gaming laptop, measuring 17% thinner and 22% lighter than its closest 18-inch gaming laptop competitor. I just want to make sure we got that out there.
There you go. It's super thin then. I guess I was wrong. I apologize.
For an 18-inch gaming laptop. What's funny is if you go on the link, right, event.msicomputer.com/GT80 Titan, you go there and you're like, well, how much does it weigh? How thick is it? What's the processor it's running?
You don't care how heavy it is. You're buying it anyway. Like that's the mentality, right?
You own a Ferrari. You like your yacht. Cristal is the beverage of choice for you and your friends. So you're buying an MSI, an MSI GT80 Titan. It was just I say 13 pounds. That's my guess. 11 pounds? Think it's going to be an 11 pound?
With the power adapter or without the power adapter?
Ooh. Oh, that's a tough one.
Because I bet that will add some significant bits to it. Yes.
Oh my goodness. That is going to be a big laptop and a horrendous thing to carry around into anything other than gaming events. You can plug a standard mechanical keyboard into any laptop with a USB port. That's what I'm sure.
What? No way.
And those don't look like standard numeral keys on the right side. I just want to say that.
No, I think those are like capacitive looking keys or something.
There's room for improvement, Emma. I'm waiting for the GT90 MSI. You almost had me, but I know accountants who would buy this in a heartbeat if it just had an actual numeric pad on the right side.
Yeah.
Twitch,
you can buy that through USB as well.
But you can have it all in one. No extra parts.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Twitch at twit.tv is the email address. We got time for a couple questions today. And then I got to finish putting together the Volvo that we're driving to SEMA. I'm driving to SEMA. You should be excited. Somebody challenged us to drive to SEMA in the biggest beater we could get our hands on. So my wife's 992 Volvo is being resurrected. I don't think there's any other word for what's going on with it right now. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome. Twitch at twit.tv is the email address. Anders emails about upgrading a GTX 680. I'm so close to being there. First off, great show. I have a GTX 680, 4 gigabytes, and I'm trying to plan out my next graphics card upgrade. I know the 680 is about 3 years old, but it's still pretty decent when I game on my 27-inch 1440p monitor, 50 to 60 frames per second on Battlefield 4. I know the 980 is better than my 680, but is the performance gain that much better to justify buying now and not waiting for the 20-nanometer card? Somewhere, someone said to wait for 20 nanometers. The main objective is to get 60 frames per second on high to ultra settings in Battlefield 4 and Battlefield 5 when it comes out. When I switch to NVIDIA Surround, which is almost unnecessary since the 27-inch 1440p is epic going from a 22-inch 1680 by 1050 monitor. I haven't tried NVIDIA Surround with my 680 and 27-inch 1440p monitors yet, but I'm sure I'll be in the low 20 frames per second on medium settings. Budget is around $400. I get about $200 for the 680, so a new 980 would be around $350. So I'm curious, get another 680, 4 gigabytes since they are sub 200 and run SLI. Get a single 980, 4 gigabyte. Will it run better than the 680, 4 gigabytes in SLI, or should he wait for the earlier mentioned 20 nanometer cards? Battlefield 4, Skyrim, mostly interested in frames per second.
First thing I'll say is, especially from the NVIDIA side of things, I don't I think waiting on the 20 nanometer parts is probably a bad decision. I think the fact that they released the 980 and the 970 on 28 nanometer, where they had really good efficiency improvements on 28 nanometer, indicate that they're not in a huge rush to get to 20. AMD may be. There was that rumor going around a few weeks ago that that was the case for them. I don't know if that will be the case for NVIDIA. In fact, I would guess that wouldn't be the case. So I wouldn't wait that long because that could be quite a while. As for the 680 versus the 980, I would say he's trying to take the selling the 680 for into account when buying the 980. I'm going to say, so 980 is a 680 is essentially a 770. Okay, I would think performance of two 770s is going to be probably a little bit better than a single 980. Now, that being said, I almost always err on the side of buy the faster single GPU card that's going to be more expensive if performance is close to equivalent, because you don't have any headaches involved with multi-GPU. You don't have any headaches involved with, is the scaling percentage high enough? Is there a driver that supports SLI day one when you want to play that game? So my first instinct was to say, oh man, 680s are about $200. I would go with that. But now I would say if you are confident that you can get about $200 for your 680 and you can find a 980 for the MSRP at 550, I would maybe go that route. And again, if you're comfortable with it, take that 980, overclock it some. We were able to overclock ours a lot. And my guess is that you will be better. You will see better performance than two 680s, or pretty close. And you won't have any of the headaches of multi-GPU.
What about an R9 290X instead of a GTX 980?
Performance-wise, that's going to be your better option, right? And then you could get that for if you sell your card for $200, you could potentially get that for only $150 instead of $300, which would be great. As long as you don't have any attachment to the AMD or to the NVIDIA ecosystem for any reason, then yes, the R9 290X is still a good option for that, and you'll be able to crossfire those 290Xs down the road. I don't see anything else in here about the rest of his hardware necessarily. He does say switch to NVIDIA Surround, but you could just as easily use Eyefinity, right? As long as you don't have like G-Sync monitors or 3D Vision monitors or something, you should be fine. If you're comfortable, changing sides, which I think people should be as prices and stuff fluctuate, then look at the 290X and look at the benchmarks on our site or anybody's site really that talk about it. 980 is a little bit faster, but it's $200 more expensive. So that's a price of an entire 680 actually difference in price. So keep that in mind when you start to poke around at these things. I would. But if you want to stay on the NVIDIA side, I think the 980 would make more sense than buying a second 680 at this point.
What about a 970?
970 would be a good one, but one 970 wouldn't be as fast as two 680s. It'd be less money for sure. And if you maybe were thinking about upgrading to two 970s, that would be a big step over two 680s. And two 970s will be significantly faster than a 980, than a single 980. And then, take into account scaling differences and game differences and performance differences with multi-GPU, you've got that option. Because you could get, if you find them in stock, you could potentially get two 970s for about $700, maybe just under $700, whereas one 980 is going to cost you $550 or so.
Interesting. Just wanted to raise
a lot of options.
Price performance thing there. We had a really good email from Steven to wrap up the show. He says, I've been drooling for the Samsung 840 EVO 500 gigabyte for a while because it was highly rated and it's getting close to the price I'm comfortable with. With its recent problems and mysterious fix, should I be looking at a different SSD? My wife will break my legs if I spend more than $200, and the Samsung 840 is getting really close to that price point. Man, is it still safe to buy Samsung SSDs? I see the lip being bit. In Kentucky.
We have this discussion a lot. I would say that the fix that Samsung put out for the 840 EVO is likely to be the permanent fix.
Right.
And as such, I wouldn't hesitate to recommend that part again in build guides or whatever, right? So just make sure when you get the drive, you download the latest update from Samsung's website and you update the firmware and do all that stuff before you put your data on it, before you install your operating system on it or whatever, that you run this tool. They actually did release the ISO version, the ISO version, so that you could make a boot disk out of it and run the firmware updater and stuff on the drive without having an operating system on it at all. Or if you have a secondary system, hook it up to that system, run the tool that way. There are lots of other good options out there. You could go with that Crucial, the Micron M550 is another really, really good price competitive part, or the M600 if you are still worried about it. But I would think we have a lot of 840 EVOs around here. A lot of our staff use 840 EVOs, again, because it's the most popular and best-selling SSD for a long time. And I wouldn't hesitate to put them in there again. Now, that being said, we are taking care, like when we updated all the EVOs that we have, we put data on them, and we're going to wait. And we're going to test it again in 3-4 weeks and see if there's any performance degradation, because now that it has happened once, you're going to remember that and want to check it and check it again. And that's the unfortunate part for Samsung on their own side, is like the internet doesn't forget, right? And so when the 850 EVO actually comes out, even if it has, there's not a technical chance that it has the same problem, people will either assume that it will, or will live in fear that it will, and thus kind of avoid it if possible. But
my granddad's
I just checked,
Ford,
actually,
the transmission blew out, so I'm never buying a Ford because they have bad transmissions.
Yes, it's exactly. Or it's like airlines, right? Everybody has had a crappy experience on every airline. They're all bad, or whatever you want to take it that way, right? So that's kind of where I'm at. Like, and I just checked I just happened to look here on Amazon, the 840 EVO, the 1 terabyte version is back down to $399 without a rebate.
Right.
So again, it's like, would I recommend that part? I was kind of already going through that process. I said, yes, I think I would, as long as people remember to update it before they get really excited and install their new SSD and then kind of forget that there was that update issue. Otherwise, I think it would be fine. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, with that, we are going to wrap this episode of This Week in Computer Hardware. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ryan Shrout, a.k.a. @RyanShrout on the Twitters in beautiful Florence, Kentucky. I'm Patrick Norton, a.k.a. @Patrick Norton. Just as creative as Ryan, huh? You can find me on Techzilla and DieTryin. You can find Ryan at PCPer.com. And I got to ask, anything you can reveal about what's coming up on PCPer?
Yeah, we're working on, we have an 850 Pro SSD roundup Alan was finishing up. I just got in the new Yoga 3 Pro, which is a Core M Broadwell-based laptop. It is super thin.
Controversial Core M.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. So we're running it through some performance testing literally right now as I record this. But I'm very interested to start the battery test overnight as well and see how that does. Like I have the Yoga 2 Pro here still as well. So I'm just literally going to sit them side by side and kind of see what happens there. Interesting stuff there. What's that?
You gonna be running Battery Mark or which?
We have our own like custom battery test that uses, it's just basically a Wi-Fi web browsing stuff. Oh, cool. And then we also started using the EMBC, which is a Android-based benchmarking thing. They have a web server that you can run that kind of keeps track of a lot of interesting stuff. So we'll probably run 2 different battery tests on that. It's so thin and so light. We'll see where it stands performance-wise. It's going to be less than what I think some people think. It's going to be like less than the Core i5 4250 that's in most of the Ultrabooks out there, like the MacBook Air. But if it can be close but perform better, and like I said, the power brick is a USB wall wart. Like it'll be neat. We'll talk about that next week.
Sorry. Sorry.
That's all right.
I did that wrong. Skype. I'm going to blame Skype. The big question I think for everybody at this point is, will it last an entire day? can you get it dazed?
I don't know. Even Lenovo only quotes it at like 8 hours because it's so.
day.
Yeah, to me it's not, but it's closer. It's one of those. The eternal issue for me will be, like, I just bought the Droid Turbo phone, right, with the 3900 milliamp hour. It's thicker than my GS4 was, than my Samsung Galaxy S4. But if it can last me a day and a half or almost 2 days, that's more beneficial to me than being thinner. And I think I have a feeling that's where this Yoga 3 Pro will be. It's thin, it's super awesome, it'll last 8 hours, but I'd rather it be a ½ inch thicker and last 16 hours if that's an option. So hopefully somebody will do that if this doesn't. Maybe it'll surprise me. We'll see next week.
Ladies and gentlemen, size may not matter, but battery life always does. I'm Patrick Norton.
I'm Ryan Shrout.
We'll see you next week on Twitch.